All right. Well, thank you, Jerry. My name's Keenan Roberts. For everyone that does not know, I'm sitting here with Jerry Van Essen, and we are going to be just discussing some matters about irrevocable trust versus revocable trust. We'll also be discussing some myth busters around lawyers and attorneys and estate planners as far as what they'll recommend to you. We think this is going to be a very important video just so that you're aware for what you're looking for when you're thinking about your future, passing on generational wealth, or protecting your assets and preserving your assets from creditors, taxes, and God knows what, right? So, thank you again, Jerry, for sitting down with me another time. And let's just get right into it if you're okay with that.
I am. Thank you, Keenan.
All right. So a couple questions that I have are again really going to be around just perspective and recommendations that we see all the time from different attorneys or even traditional lawyers or estate planners. And what I'd like to know, just starting out, is what are the primary differences between irrevocable and revocable trust from a traditional lawyer's perspective? And I'll say that again, what are primary differences between irrevocable and revocable trust from a traditional lawyer's perspective, not Jerry's perspective? But I just want to throw that in there because that's the emphasis of my question.
Nope, that's fine. Um, well, the biggest thing is that they both say trust. But the revocable, at the end of the day, it's just you. The revocable, and that's why attorneys like working with revocable so much, is because it can be revoked at any time. A revocable doesn't get an EIN typically. It runs underneath your social security number, and all the income still falls on your personal 1040. And there is zero asset protection there. Because if something were to happen that you and something happened that you're maybe not even the fault of, but you're in the middle of a lawsuit and you lose, the plaintiff's attorney is going to look at the judge and say, Mr. Judge, he has a revocable trust. Have him revoke it to bring those assets to the table so my client can get paid. So, so, and depending on how they're written, if they're written well enough, it'll keep you out of probate. If they're written poorly, it won't even keep you out of probate. So, for the most part. Now, on the totally opposite end of the spectrum is the irrevocable. Irrevocable is not you. It has its own EIN. It is its own entity and has no reflection on you whatsoever. You could, if something happened that you didn't wake up tomorrow morning, the irrevocable keeps right on going. Where the difference there, the revocable, if you didn't wake up tomorrow morning, the whole world stops because it has to end with you. You are the host, if that makes sense, for the revocable. And so when something happens to you, it also happens to the revocable. Now it has to end and it has to go back to whoever developed it or some attorney or somebody to change that trust now into an irrevocable. So, but if you start out with an irrevocable, you don't have to worry about all those aspects. On the irrevocable, as we had mentioned, it's not you, it has its own EIN, it's its own entity, and whether something happens to you or not, it keeps on going. So if something did happen to you that you didn't wake up tomorrow morning, your loved ones actually could grieve for you and not have to run around and meet with attorneys and those. So that's the two biggest difference.
Wow, no, that's very interesting, and I'm sure that many people have not even considered that that there even being a different side of it where if it's connected to you as a revocable, everything stops, right? Versus an irrevocable trust, it's not connected directly to you. and also it can continue depending on how it's written. So no, appreciate that. Um, what potential downsides of an irrevocable trust do traditional estate planners focus on most when advising clients? And this is again a little trend. I'm transitioning, but we'll probably get back to the lawyers. But we're talking estate planners. What potential downsides of irrevocable trust do traditional estate planners focus on most when advising their clients?
It's my understanding that most don't even write trusts. They will send the client to an attorney to have the trust written. So when the client comes back to them, they have a trust that's more than likely a statutory trust from the attorney. And depending now what the attorney wrote is what they will have to work with. Of course, they talked about that in advance, but they're primarily going to want to work through the revocable trust because that's what the attorney is going to typically write up for them. They will tell the client that the last thing you want is an irrevocable because you will lose all control. And so that scares most people. And so if they would actually come to the table in a different form, meaning if you had a game and you mixed up all the players, you're not going to be playing your best game because you took your pitcher and you put your pitcher off in left field. You took your left fielder and put him on home base, and the home baseman probably up as a pitcher. Well, when you start flipping everybody around, then you're not going to have your best game. So by keeping the participants in the right areas, then you're going to have your best game. You're going to have your chances at your best game. So again, they typically want to take the client and make them the grantor of that trust on an irrevocable end. You can do it on the revocable side all day long and it doesn't affect it, but it greatly affects it on the irrevocable side.
Wow, wow, yeah, that's something I don't hear talked about enough, and that's that when you do realize the value of an irrevocable trust, and you go directly to an attorney or however you get that set up, you're going to be put in that grantor position or creator position, and that's not where you want to be. You mentioned the ball game, and I just wanted to share with everyone listening today that this is something that it's in your ebook, right? When you kind of go through the different roles and different players in the game. So if you haven't read that book, we'll put it down in the description so you can take a look. But it's called the Irrevocable Trust, the game you cannot afford to lose. Very great short book. It'll take a couple minutes maybe to read through it. I highly advise it. How does, and this may sound like a trick question depending on anyone's level of understanding here, for the viewer or listener, but how does the performance of an irrevocable trust affect a client's control over their assets, and why might this be seen as a disadvantage? You mentioned the control aspect earlier, so I would love to hear your perspective on this.
Well, on the irrevocable side, if you are going to put the client in the grantor or trustor position, then the grantor or trustor has to walk away. They come in, they create the trust, develop the trust, put the rules together with the people that are drawing up the trust, and then their job, when their job is finished, they have to exit. And that's how an irrevocable trust works. So what you want to be is the trustee. You never ever want to be in the grantor, trustor position. So by putting everyone in the correct area that they should be, then, like I said earlier, you have the best opportunity for the best results. And you wouldn't lose, you gain all the control as a trustee. Does that help?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely, and I think that's what's missed so much. It's not a disadvantage when on paper you, not even on paper, it's not a disadvantage when you lose control, because depending on how the trust is written, you should have full control if you're the trustee, right? So that is, again, that might be the trick question for someone listening, when it comes to the performance of an irrevocable trust and why it might be seen as a disadvantage. And I would even go and say that it's a disadvantage depending on how it's written, and how you have the trust laid out. So no, that definitely helps. I know we're coming up on time here, so just want to ask maybe one or two more questions. We'll keep it short and sweet for our listeners. Um, are traditional lawyers generally more conservative about recommending irrevocable trust due to their potential risks or unknowns for the client?
Potential risks. There's more, in my book, there's more potential risks in a revocable than an irrevocable. So an attorney is going to want them to shy away from the type of irrevocable they set up, again, because they're going to lose control in that environment. And they're going to tell their client that you're going to want to keep control, so we want to keep the revocable side of it. But again, as we had mentioned earlier, on the revocable side, there is no asset protection. And there is no, depending on how it's written, if you don't wake up tomorrow, there's a lot of scrambling typically that has to be done. Either way, even if it's written well, the your family's still sitting through a lot of meetings and going through a lot of things, bringing that revocable into the irrevocable side. So I always feel it's best to start out with the irrevocable right away. You have great asset protection. You have the peace of mind that if you don't wake up in the morning, and you have better tax advantages at the end of the day as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's, I was just thinking as you were saying that people want to control everything, and that's great. You should be able to, but it's sort of like flipped when it's highly recommended in most cases to be the creator so that you can keep the control. When in reality, there's, yeah, you may control it, but like you said, there's zero asset protection. Have all the control you want. When things are done, when things are all said and done, you don't have any control over what happens next. And so, really, is the strength to have full control in zero asset protection, or ultimate control with 100% asset protection? That's what I was thinking about just now. Anyway, thank you so much for taking a little bit of your time throughout the day just to have a conversation with me about this. These are some discussions that I definitely want to continue. Maybe we'll have a series just on this topic alone. But thank you everyone for watching. If you want to know more resources, please go down at the bottom of our video and select our website, where you will learn where we have upcoming trainings. You can purchase our ebook where we go deeper into the game that you cannot afford to lose. And we'd love to look forward to have a conversation with you about how you can begin your estate planning journey.